Did ancient aliens help build the pyramids? We're here to talk about it. This is part 1 of Ancient Aliens and Stuff.
Welcome to Aliens and Stuff. I'm Tom, this is Mike, that's my man Spencer over there. Today, we're going to talk about whether ancient aliens helped build the pyramids. Now, by the pyramids, I'm not just talking about the ones in Egypt, although that is quite a big focus.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try and right, when I did the research on this, there is a lot of information on pyramids, okay? And we could be sat here doing a 2-hour special on pyramids. We're not going to do that. I'm going to try and condense it and put forward my argument. Because there's a lot to think about the pyramids, okay? So just take the ones in Egypt, all right? They were built about 4,000 years ago. There's a lot of debate over how they were built and how kind of technologically advanced the Egyptians were. You know, there's a whole theory about how they were all built up with the, you know, to be in line with the Orion constellation and things like that. And you look back and if you assumed technology is at its peak now and then you go backwards, right? And our knowledge is here and then it goes backwards, right? The knowledge these guys had astronomically, right, of the stars and everything else boggles my mind. And I've read so many different articles and bits on how they knew how to do this, that and the other. It's mind-boggling, right? But what I have got, obviously, there are more pyramids than the ones in Egypt.
There are, yeah.
Everybody out there knows. You've been to the pyramids in Egypt?
I've been to the pyramids of Giza, yes.
I've never been. When you saw them, just tell me, what did you think? Are they as big in real life as what they seem in the photos?
They're bigger.
Yeah.
I'm being genuinely serious. This is what shocked me a little bit when I went, because I went there 2010 with my missus, and we arrived really, really early in the morning, and it was really, really hot. There was literally thousands of people there.
Yeah.
And you see them about 20 minutes before you arrive at them.
Really?
You drive them
That
through
big?
Cairo, and you're like, oh, we're there in a minute. And you carry on driving, and they're getting bigger and bigger out the minibus window, bigger and bigger, bigger. Then you get there and you stand out. Because what do you think? Well, if I was to ask you now, how big do you think each of the, because you can see the individual stones.
Oh, yeah.
How big,
Well,
the size of that wall?
I don't think you can climb up on them, can you?
I thought before I went there, they were about my height, each stone.
Yeah.
They are bigger than that.
See,
They
I
are
always
huge.
knew they were going to be big, but I think it's one of those things I really want to see in person one day. It's like one of my bucket list things.
I actually got to go in one of them as well. I went into
Oh, yeah.
the second pyramid of Giza, but I went down in one, but I'll talk about that later on.
No, fair enough. Right, so what I've got is I've got a photo which we're going to bring up on the screen, okay? And this shows a overview of all the pyramids, not let's say all of them, but the majority of all the key pyramids that are out there in the world, all right?
Different types.
They're different types, they all look a bit different, and they're all built around, you know, different time scales and everything as well.
Do you know what
all
I'd
right?
say, Tom, is that they are all a pyramid shape?
Well, you say that, but some have got, you know, yeah, you've got a point, but I mean, you know, that one there, the one that, the Iranian one compared to the, you know, the Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico do look different.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
But what is bizarre, okay, is the similarities between a lot of them and when they were built and how they were built, okay?
Can I just add something quickly?
Of course you can.
I've actually been to Chichen Itza
Have
in
you?
Mexico. I've been to the ziggurat.
Okay, look, well, so
Okay.
you're giving your, just what was it like? How big was it? How did it see? How did it feel?
Whopping. I wouldn't say as big as the Egyptian pyramids from what Mike's told me, but I went to a couple of different sites when I was in Central America.
Yeah.
The craftsmanship's phenomenal, but there's sort of other features to it as well. Like you were saying about sort of alignment of the stars. One of the weird things I found in a lot of the pyramids and structures was the way that sound travels around the structures. So they're built in a way in which it carries certain sounds throughout the structures and along certain paths and things. Really, really incredible to see. But I just thought I'd throw my
No,
two cents in there,
absolutely. I forgot you'd been there.
Yeah,
I didn't know
yeah.
you'd gone there. Right, so what I have got as well, there are 2 pyramids that were built, okay, 9,000 miles apart. One of them is in Cambodia, okay?
Yep. Asia, yeah.
Absolutely. Now, basically, the idea is that this was built because there was a half divine being, half human, right, called Preopisnikar, okay? Now, basically, he is meant to have been taken and given advanced instructions on mathematics and engineering. He was brought back down and he constructed his pyramid, okay? Now 9,000 miles away, okay, in the ancient city of Tikal, okay, there's the Temple of the Great Jaguar.
I've been to Tikal.
There we
You've
go.
been there as well.
I've been there as well, yeah.
Now, there is also a feathered serpent god, okay, who allegedly built this, okay? And again, very similar mythology.
Was it the
very
Owl
similar
Man?
story. No, not the Owl
It sounds
Man.
like the Owl Man.
It's not the Owl
No,
Man.
he's a feathered
right?
crustacean creature.
But in,
Sorry,
yeah, in Mesoamerican cultures, okay, the idea is he's meant to be the teacher of mathematics, and he's meant to be the guy who taught the Mayans their calendar or the mathematics, which obviously they were far advanced at the time. Now these were built at the same time, similar time, 9,000 miles away from each other. The similarity there is uncanny,
I agree. Yeah, no, I agree.
right?
And this is in an age where people didn't travel that far.
No, yeah, I mean, this is like incredibly long time ago, right? And
It was a long bus ride between the two.
yeah,
Let's say
there
that.
is no way anybody would have been travelling 9,000 miles, right?
Well, over water as well, a lot of it.
Well, yeah, and it's you look at that. I mean, you've got the stairs going up. You've got the two. I mean, it is so similar. One is bigger than the other.
yeah.
Architecturally speaking, it's almost like they were built off the same blueprint, right? Or
Yeah, I
they
agree.
were instructed to build them by the same person, if you will. Okay.
It's not like you could, log on to architecturaldesigns.com and
Yeah, you can't Google
Absolutely,
it.
and you're talking about ancient man at this point. It's
Yeah.
like, and it's just. I mean, the fact that they built them in the first place is remarkable, and the fact that they're so similar for me just kind of raises a few questions. All right. Now, I have also got some other photos as well. All right. Now, in Peru, there's a place called, and I'm going to, excuse my pronunciation. It's called
Oh, here we go.
Pacha. Anyway, it's in Peru, right? If we bring that one up, this here, bit of a temple, okay? Now, we were talking about ancient Egypt a minute ago, okay? Which I've got a cool fact I'm going to tell you about in a minute.
Okay.
Now, the next photo, Luxor in Egypt. Strikingly similar. And we can go into this in so many levels, there's so many examples, okay?
Do you not think though that's potentially with the climate that they're in and the tools that they had at the time, just a logical way to build something?
Well, but if you look at the way that is built, I mean, bearing in mind that is thousands and thousands and thousands of years old now, and it has stood the test of time. You imagine that when that was built. These are built with such precision. I mean, but also another thing we can mention, which I didn't mention about the Egyptian pyramids, like you mentioned about the size of the rocks, as well as you did for the temple you saw. These things were quarried and carried using no machinery, no nothing, from hundreds and hundreds of miles away,
Yeah.
either using slave labour, or actually the Egyptians now.
Yeah, that's
favour the fact that
incorrect.
they are actually paid workers. But
They were not only that, and do you want me to give some context on that?
go for it.
In Egypt, and this is the tour that I had when I went there, from an Egyptologist that gave the tour, it's a massive misconception that slaves built the pyramids. It just didn't. That
Yeah.
wasn't the case. They've excavated cities and towns around where the pyramids of Giza
Yeah.
are, and in other areas of Egypt as well, where they are better dwellings than the average person would have in Egypt at that time.
Yeah.
They have better kind of pottery that they found. It was almost very high-end, and it was actually a massive honour for them to spend their life's work as craftsmen building these pyramids for their pharaoh. Back then, obviously, they didn't live as long. They were kind of 40s, 50s tops. You got to 50, you were classed as an old man. And that's basically how long the pyramids took a lot of the time, was kind of 40 to 50 years to build, allegedly. And it was a massive honour for them to do it.
Well, when we talked about Egypt, I'm going to put my little Tom's fact into here. Right?
Go on, throw it
So
at us.
to just put into context how old the Egyptian pyramids are, we all know Cleopatra,
Yeah.
right? Cleopatra lived closer to the invention of the iPhone than she did to the building of the pyramids.
What?
Wow.
So
That's
less
crazy.
time has
Wow.
passed since she was alive and the first iPhone came out to when the pyramids were. So that's how the pyramids were about 2,000 years old when she was around.
That's
that just kind of
incredible.
blows your mind Just think about how
And
old
that's the
these
pyramids of
things
Giza,
are.
yeah?
That's the pyramids of
Okay,
Giza, right?
That's interesting.
Obviously, there are more pyramids, but those are the ones,
Yeah, the famous
those are the main ones, okay? Now, also in Greece, all right, there are some little less known pyramids because a lot of them are being excavated and found recently. But there is a pyramid which was found on Kyros, I think I'm pronouncing that, which they reckon is also about 4,000 years old, which is very similar in design to the pyramids of Giza and other pyramids around in Egypt. And also, they have like an entranceway as you go in, which is also orientated with Orion, right?
I think you could explain that though, because the Egyptians were very resourceful people. They were travellers. They did kind of go outside of Egypt and have a look around and explore. Egypt is only across the Med.
No.
Greece is just across the Med.
Absolutely, and they reckon there's actually a debate when it comes to. I was looking a bit about the stuff about astronomy and bits. There's a debate whether the Greeks learned astronomy first or whether it was the Egyptians. There's a lot of debate whether it was Egyptian priests apparently, which is unusual because why would I don't know, but
they're
you think maybe they
places.
said they got it from the gods or something.
I mean, to be fair, if they worship a sun god,
yes.
So
there's a bit of debate who came up with what first and who taught who, but basically it was around the same time. And like I said, these places aren't massively far apart. There's too many similarities around here for it to be kind of a coincidence. Now I have got some other photos, which I'm just gonna bring up on the screen for you. Now this is stonework, okay? Now this stonework is in Egypt.
Yeah.
And then the next one I've got is from Machu Picchu. Okay.
Wow, the other side of the world.
Now, I actually had a better photo of this, but I couldn't actually use it at the time. But the way that the stonework is done and how precisely it's put together, there are a couple of photos where you can put them side by side, and if you were to place yourself there and say, where are you, it'd be very hard to push to say which one you're in. Again, they're very similar, and they are very far apart, and they were built, roughly around the same time. And a lot of archaeologists say, it is amazing how they did that with the tools that they had, and we struggle to recreate it. And if anything, we would be using lasers and bits now to get something that good.
I've actually got a point on this, and I think we are. When people say that, it annoys me, quite frankly, because we are assuming, okay, that the people that lived back thousands of years ago were equally as proficient with chisels, hammers, those kinds of hand tools as we are today, which is insulting, I think, to them. My personal opinion is I think they were way more proficient at using those tools.
This is all they had.
Because that's all they had. They didn't have any other options. We're lazy. I think we've become, because we've had other inventions, machinery, lasers, diggers, all this kind of stuff. We've become lazy, and we don't focus as much on our craft these days. And I can say that as someone who is actually a carpenter. Okay,
That's true.
I am a qualified.
You are a qualified joiner.
I am a qualified joiner. We don't focus on as much on that these days.
True.
We
I get
a
you.
lot on
It's an
machinery.
absolute.
And I personally think back then they were just better at using tools than we are.
I mean, just to add to that, really, is you look at things like Michelangelo's David and things like that, and the stonework that went into that. Perhaps it's a case of, instead of being sort of generic builders, maybe there was more of a sort of artisan craft to producing these things.
Yeah,
so,
100%. But I think what also kind of overrides a lot for me is that, you go through all of these places and they always have a story where somebody who was half human, half divine or whatever was taught and was told to pass this knowledge down to build these structures, right?
Are you saying that's aliens?
Could be. Now, to wrap it up with the ancient alien theory.
right, here we go.
Right.
And
I'm
this
going
is
to put
where
another
I'm going to
photo
attack.
up on. No, I'm going to put another photo up on the screen here. Okay.
Yeah.
And I want you to have a little look at it for me.
Okay.
This is probably where I'm going to attack you, Tom.
Okay.
I'm not going to lie.
Now this is Mars.
Oh, God.
Now,
Go on.
now as you can see up there, that's like the face of Mars.
I'm not even
which is
looking
a
at it.
well-documented photo.
Yes.
Right. A lot of. I mean, that warrants its own episode in its own right because depending on there's different photos of it, right? That's the face of Mars. Okay.
Yeah.
You got the Sphinx in Egypt, right? See these pyramid-like structures here?
No.
Go on.
How many sides has a pyramid got?
Okay.
It depends.
It depends. Yeah.
How many sides has the pyramid of Giza got?
Hang on. I'll put another photo up. My last one, I promise. That's on Mars.
Where did you get that photo from?
It was from the NASA website, from the rover.
Okay.
All right. Now, it could well be a random rock that looks like a pyramid.
That's what I think it is.
Okay. But from all the things that I've seen, they said naturally forming pyramids, in order to be able to erode a rock on each side to it's very low. It's not impossible, but it's like 1 in a billion. It just doesn't really happen. It wouldn't be that symmetrical. Does that not look like a pyramid?
It does look like a pyramid.
It does look
And
like
if you,
a pyramid.
you know, and that other photo, if you think about the pyramids of Giza, you've got multiple pyramids, smaller pyramids around, you've got the Sphinx. So, what if, I'm going to throw it out there as my ancient alien theory, and it is a stretch, okay? What if, we all know Mars was a wet and warm planet once.
Yeah, it was.
It
Yeah, I
had an
agree with that.
atmosphere, right? But it lost its like magnetic core, and basically its atmosphere was eroded, right?
Yeah.
That's why it's no longer wet and warm, okay? Hopefully Elon Musk will change that, but whatever. Right? So what if back 5,000 years ago, we were being visited by Martians, right? Okay? We built, or maybe the Martians, maybe we were all Martians, maybe they came down and built the pyramids, and then when they lost their atmosphere, so many people got marooned here. I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there as an idea,
What have
right?
you been smoking? Honestly.
Alright, it is a bit of a stretch.
No. It's
but
just
no.
a rock. That's a rock on Mars.
Oh, come on, the face of Mars looks pretty good.
There's a lot of rocks on Mars. There is the
Mate, you
probability.
even turned around to me and talked about structures on the moon and Mars, mate, beforehand.
You know what? I'm open to structures, not pyramids. I don't think there is other images of other base-like looking structures. I can buy into that a little bit.
Okay.
I just don't believe the pyramid theory
Fair
about
enough.
Mars
Right.
or any other
Now,
planet. For
what
that
I'm
matter.
saying is, even if people did help people build pyramids around the world, etc., I'm not saying they came from Mars, but I just thought I'd put that up there at the end just for a bit of fun, really, just to show that, you know, there are other examples of pyramid-like structures throughout the solar system.
Well, I've got a point to make on this, because another reason why a lot of people think that aliens might have assisted in building pyramids on Earth is that through hieroglyphics and papers and papaya they found at the time.
Papyrus.
Papyrus.
Papayas are fruit.
All right.
They found
okay.
papayas.
Papyrus. Yeah. Okay. At the time,
So they made honey in a minute or something.
They found depictions of kind of alien-looking creatures, bigger creatures that are taller, bigger heads. Sometimes they have kind of like the heads of geese or crocodiles, or I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't like geese first, but crocodiles
like
and
an
birds,
ibis or
ibis, all that sort of stuff. My question to you is on this, okay? Is it not just cosplay?
Okay, let me throw this out to you then. On that note,
no, I'm going to finish my point. We in our modern day civilization that we have built, okay, we love sci-fi, don't we? Correct?
yeah.
We look at sci-fi. If you go to Florida, you go to Disneyland, there is Star Wars World, and there's a Millennium Falcon ship sat there.
I've been there.
And you've been there. There we
Yeah.
go. We've all been somewhere about this episode. Imagine if 4,000 or 5,000 years down the road, there's a different civilization. That's all been covered over with sand or earth or whatever. They're excavating, going, "Oh, I wonder what the people were doing back in the day," and they uncover the Millennium Falcon that's been buried.
But it was quite clearly that nothing would work on it.
But why? Is it not an alien craft?
He's lost me here.
Spencer.
Right. Okay. I'm just gonna interject here. I totally get what you're saying, Mike. I don't know if it's relevant to the matching up of pyramids across. I get what you're. I'm with you. I'm totally with you, and I get your point, which is that But what you're talking about is symbols in hieroglyphics as opposed to architectural.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about architectural.
I get what you-
the Sphinx, for example.
Well, look, but before we get on to the Sphinx, I just want to drop something else in, because you just mentioned it about like cosplay and other bits, right? So, and like, you know, those characters with different size heads and bits. Tutankhamun's father, is it Tutankhamun?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, it is. I've seen.
I'll overlay it with text if
This
it's
is
wrong.
why I have notes.
Right. Basically, he was depicted with an elongated skull.
Yeah.
Right? And he was the one who changed the religions in Egypt, so...
He temporarily changed it
Yes.
from, was it Atum Ra to a singular
Yes,
deity, singular solar deity,
Absolutely.
and then they undid it later.
Yeah, and they tried to eradicate everything of it.
Yeah.
Right? And then Tutankhamun was meant to be like, so basically his dad was meant to be like half human, half divine, or half alien, or whatever you want to be, half something not of this world. And he was always depicted with an elongated skull, right? Now, when Tutankhamun took to power, obviously they went back to the old system and they got rid of everything about his dad. When they dug his mummified remains up, he did have an elongated skull.
I've seen it.
I can chip in here because the Mongolians also had elongated skulls, because what they used to practice was head binding to deliberately elongate the skull to give across an image of terror. And what's hypothesized is that the Egyptians used to follow a similar practice to create an image of divinity.
And do you know why that is as well? And it's easily done. They did it from a very, because I've seen the skull. Like, I went to the Egyptian Museum, I've seen the skull elongated. And it is elongated.
Yeah.
Definitely. But did you know that when babies are born, for the first kind of 2 years, they've got their plates are not connected on their head. It allows them to be able to come out quicker and easier. And literally, my son's one now. There is like a triangle on his head where his skull hasn't quite met yet, and it throbs. It's a bit weird. But from a very young age, they used to bind their children's heads, so it did give them an elongated skull, so those plates fit in a strange way.
I didn't know
like
they did
that
explains
like for Mongolians.
From what I read and heard,
that's not aliens.
There's like this is like a different, just because of the story that marries with it.
Just scooting back to what Mike was saying, I think just to sort of apply to try and sort of bridge the gap here, because I'm with Mike on this one. A lot of ancient astronaut theorists are taking hieroglyphics and the stories and saying this is what's happened. These beings came down and then they did this and they did that, and look, that looks like a microchip and that looks like a UFO and all of this stuff. And I think the point Mike was trying to make is that a lot of ancient astronaut theorists say they put up there what they saw, they put up there what was real, whereas nowadays you look at it and you've got freaking Star Wars land, which is a whole place dedicated to
Star Trek.
Star
Exactly.
Wars.
Well, both though. That's what I mean.
And I do get what you're saying, which is that we don't necessarily depict what's real here. So what's to say that they are? I think the point Tom was making was more about the distances between these civilizations.
Yeah, and the similarities.
And
do
the
you know what? I
similarities,
agree with that.
which is interesting. Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying about that, Tom. I can't explain why there's two pyramids that look exactly the same, 9,000 miles apart, during a period where no one travelled. I can't explain that.
I was not saying no one travelled, but it was much harder.
Yeah.
And,
What we'll say as well, there was a lot of other examples that weren't temples or weren't pyramids, which I could have used, but I tried to be specific and pick 3 or 4 bits that I thought were quite compelling.
Yeah.
But there are there's stone carvings in one side of the world and another side, but it has nothing to do with pyramids. It's always like, how did that get there? So there's more than that as an example.
It's kind of like Stonehenge, because people always used to say to me, Stonehenge, what if that was some sort of alien structure? And I was always like, yeah, whatever, when I was younger, whatever, it's just a bunch of rocks. But then, and this takes it back to the De Glocker episode, you look at the fly trap, which, I mean, that's even been hypothesized as, a water unit for, heavy water for nuclear reactors and things like that. That just looks like a more complete Stonehenge.
Yeah,
so what if it is just for remains of, I get what you're saying.
You see, this is another point as well about the building and a theory about why there is pyramids 9,000 miles apart that look the same. And it goes back to what I was saying about the tools, and it's best practices about how, because a pyramid, you can build a pyramid with pretty much without having to erect scaffolding or anything like that. You start at the bottom, you do the outside base, you then move in, do the inside base, move in, do the inside base, and before you know it, you've got to the top. And that might just be that they built the same thing in 2 different areas because they got to the point in their civilizations where they were advanced enough to work out a best practice for building a temple or something like that. And it just happens to be that that's the easiest way to do it. And then it's just a coincidence.
But on that theory, when you look at the photos that we brought up at the beginning of like all the different pyramids, like you look at the one in Iraq, looks nothing like the one in ancient Egypt, and looks nothing like the ones in Mexico and Peru. So they are different, but there are similarities as well. So, when I first did it, I was a bit disappointed. I was like, actually, there's thousands of years separating all of these things, but the further away you get in time, the different they look.
Yeah.
So if you imagine, if you're building pyramids over the course of 2,000 years. They're not all going to look the same. They might advance, they might change slightly, etc., which can account for that. But I think, for me, if you look at those 2 pyramids that I uploaded that were built 9,000 miles apart, which are phenomenally similar,
They are,
I think
I agree.
that as the crux of the argument, as we wrap it up, was there additional help? Did aliens help build the pyramids? I'm a believer, man. Hashtag absolute aliens.
No.
I'm going to go with, at that time, I know what you're saying about how we don't give the ancient people enough credit, but I can't foresee how 2 civilizations about the same time, 9,000 miles apart, can suddenly decide to build something that is so similar and so advanced, using rocks that are just so heavy, using primitive. I just can't see it unless there was some outside help. And outside help for me means aliens.
Spence?
So, I think really this has opened a nice little conversation, okay? I'm going to say that I'm undecided at the moment, and what I think really,
because this episode in a row that
well,
you've gone
but
undecided.
this is a very high level overview of this. We've
Yeah,
not
agreed.
been specific enough, and I think what we need to do is follow this up. On one hand, okay, what building techniques possibly could they have used, and find out a bit more about that. And on the flip side, if you think it was aliens, why? What would they have been used for? Those are the 2 questions that need answering. If we're saying that they had the tools to do this and the techniques, we need to talk about what tools and techniques they used. And if we're saying it's aliens, we need to talk about what purpose they exist for. So for me, I'm undecided because we need to further this conversation out.
Well, we need to look at this in a future episode of Ancient Aliens and stuff then.
I think so. I mean, to give you my 2 cents, I think you all know what I'm going to say. Did aliens help build the pyramid? I don't think they did, because I think we just underestimate what the ancient people of that time were able to achieve. And if it was ancient aliens and they were arriving on these alleged spheres, which are depicted in these sources, which are depicted in the hieroglyphics, metal spheres, alloys. Why did they not advise them to use different materials to make something?
Because stone lasts longer than pretty much anything else.
Well, that's a good point, actually.
It's obviously abundantly available.
Hey, we need to follow this up.
We're going to follow
More
up.
information is needed.
Put something in the comments, guys, as well, because we're really interested to see what your opinion is on this.
Yeah.
If you agree with any of us, let us know. If you disagree with us, let us know. Thanks very much for watching. Make sure you
Like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification icon.
see you next time.